Park T had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned. His hands shook when he tried to hold tools. The research vessel Horizon's Edge was dying around him, and he was the only one who could save it. 11 days ago, a solar flare had hit the ship like a giant fist. The communication array exploded in a shower of sparks. The climate control system failed. Half the lights went dark. T had been alone on this mission, a simple mineral survey in deep space, and now he was alone with a broken ship and no way to call for help. He was still 2 months away from Earth. The heat inside the ship grew worse every day. The backup cooling systems tried their best, but they were not designed for this kind of damage. T worked through the heat. He fixed what he could fix. He rerouted power. He patched holes. He did everything a good engineer should do. But the heat never stopped. By the 11th day, the temperature inside the ship reached 42 degrees. T's uniform stuck to his skin with sweat. His throat was dry no matter how much water he drank. His body felt heavy, like someone had filled his bones with lead. He stood in the observation deck looking out at the endless stars. This was his favorite place on the ship. The large window showed the universe in all its beauty. Cold, distant stars, swirling clouds of gas and dust, the darkness between worlds. T's vision blurred. He had pushed himself too hard. He knew this. But what choice did he have? If he stopped working, the ship would fail completely. If the ship failed, he would die. But his body had reached its limit. Human beings were strong, but they were not machines. They needed rest. They needed sleep. And T had denied himself both for far too long. He tried to walk to his cabin, but his legs gave up after 10 steps. He fell to his knees on the observation deck floor. The metal was warm under his palms. Everything was warm, too warm. With shaking hands, T pulled off his shirt, then his pants, then everything else. The heat was unbearable. His skin needed to breathe. His body needed to cool down, even if only a little. He lay down on the floor of the observation deck, completely bare, staring up at the stars through the great window above him. The metal floor was uncomfortable, but he did not care anymore. He was too tired to care about anything. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. Park T, alone in the darkness of space, fell into a deep and dreamless sleep. He did not know that his ship had drifted into contested space. He did not know that 3 alien vessels had detected the damaged craft. He did not know that, at that very moment, beings from 3 different worlds were preparing to board his ship. The first vessel belonged to the Velii. They were tall creatures with hard shells covering their bodies, like insects from Earth but standing upright like men. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their eyes were large and dark, seeing in spectrums that humans could not imagine. Commander Bora led the Velii team. She was a veteran of many battles, and she did not trust anything she could not understand. The second vessel belonged to the Oram. They were soft-bodied creatures that had evolved in deep oceans. They wore special suits filled with liquid that allowed them to survive in dry environments. Their skin changed colors based on their emotions. The Oram were known for their caution and their fear of contamination. The third vessel belonged to the Keth. They were not made of flesh at all. The Keth were silicon-based life forms, their bodies composed of living crystal that grew and changed over centuries. They moved slowly but thought quickly. Among them was a young scientist named Duri, who had spent her life studying unknown species. These 3 civilizations did not trust each other. They had fought wars in the past, but they had also signed treaties. In neutral space like this sector, they were forbidden from fighting. If they met, they had to cooperate. So when all 3 vessels detected the same damaged ship, they had no choice. They had to board together. They had to investigate together. Whatever they found, they would have to deal with as a group. The 3 teams entered the Horizon's Edge through different airlocks. The Velii came in with weapons ready. The Oram came in with scanning equipment. The Keth came in with scientific instruments. What they found confused them all. The ship was clearly damaged, but someone had been making repairs. Tools lay scattered in the corridors. Panels had been opened and rewired. Someone was alive on this vessel. Commander Bora led the way, her 4 arms holding 2 plasma rifles and 2 scanning devices. The ORM delegate slithered behind her in his liquid-filled suit. Duri floated alongside them, her crystalline body catching the emergency lights and scattering them into rainbows. They followed the life signs to the observation deck. The door slid open, and there, lying in the center of the room, was something none of them had ever seen before. It was a creature. It had 2 arms and 2 legs like some species they knew, but its skin was completely exposed. No shell, no armor, no protective covering of any kind, just soft, pink-brown flesh stretched over visible muscles. They could see its chest moving up and down as it breathed. They could see the blood vessels under its skin. The creature was lying on its back, completely bare, sleeping under the stars. Commander Bora raised her weapons. The ORM delegate turned a deep shade of yellow, which meant fear. Duri moved closer, fascinated despite her caution. Their scanning equipment gave them readings that made no sense. The creature's body temperature was 37 degrees. That was a killing fever for most species. How was it still alive? Worse, their scans detected billions of tiny organisms living inside the creature's body. Billions. The thing was full of microscopic life forms. Was it a host? Was it infected? Was it some kind of biological weapon designed to spread disease? The ORM delegate stepped backward. In his culture, such contamination was the greatest horror imaginable. But there was more. The creature's eyes were positioned on the front of its face, like a predator. Its teeth included sharp points designed for tearing meat. Its hands ended in fingers that could grip and grab and hold. Everything about this creature said danger. Everything about it said death. Yet here it was, sleeping naked and defenseless on the floor, its soft belly exposed to anyone who might wish to harm it. Commander Bora did not understand. In her experience, dangerous things protected themselves. They wore armor. They built defenses. They never, ever made themselves vulnerable. But this creature had stripped away every protection. It had closed its eyes. It had stopped moving. It had made itself completely helpless in an unknown place surrounded by potential enemies. Was it stupid? Was it arrogant? Was it so powerful that it feared nothing? The 3 alien species stood in silence around the sleeping human. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They simply stared, trying to understand what they were seeing. Duri's crystalline mind worked through the data. This creature came from an uncharted region of space, a region they had avoided because of strange radio signals, primitive signals. They had assumed the species they were not worth studying. Perhaps they had been wrong. The creature stirred slightly. It made a sound with its mouth, a mumble in a language none of them knew. Then it fell still again, lost in whatever dreams its strange mind created. Commander Bora looked at the ORM delegate. The ORM delegate looked at Duri. Duri looked back at Commander Bora. None of them knew what to do. They had found something new, something unexpected, something that did not fit into any category they understood. They had found a human, and the human had no idea they were there. The 3 alien species stood around the sleeping human for a long time. Nobody wanted to be the first to act. Nobody wanted to make a mistake with something so unknown. Commander Bora kept her weapons aimed at the creature. Her instincts told her to shoot it before it could wake up. In her many years of military service, she had learned one simple rule: kill dangerous things before they can kill you. And this creature looked dangerous. But the treaties prevented her from acting alone. Any decision about unknown species had to be made together. That was the law. The ORM delegate, whose name was Gil, had backed himself against the far wall. His suit's liquid had turned a sick shade of green, showing his deep discomfort. He could not stop thinking about the billions of organisms living inside the creature's body. What were they? What did they do? Could they spread through the air? Dury was the only one who moved closer. Her crystalline body made soft, chiming sounds as she approached the sleeping human. She had studied hundreds of species in her career. She had seen life forms made of gas, made of energy, made of pure thought, but she had never seen anything quite like this. She extended one of her sensory limbs and scanned the creature more carefully. The results were fascinating. The tiny organisms inside the creature were not parasites. They were not invaders. They lived in a special relationship with their host. They helped the creature digest food. They protected it from disease. They were part of it. Dury shared this information with the others through their communication link. Commander Bora was not impressed. Symbiotic organisms were common in the galaxy. What concerned her was everything else about this creature. She pointed at its chest. The skin there was thin enough that they could see the outline of bones beneath it. Bones. Hard internal structures. Most species either had their hard parts on the outside, like the velii, or had no hard parts at all, like the oram. But this creature kept its armor on the inside, protected by soft flesh. It was like wearing your skeleton as underwear. It made no sense. Then there were the creature's hands. 5 digits on each one with joints that allowed for complex movements. Those hands could grip tools. They could make fists. They could choke the life out of enemies. Commander Bora had hands too, but hers were covered in hard shell. This creature's hands were naked and vulnerable, yet somehow that made them more frightening. Dury moved to the creature's head. Its face was strange. 2 eyes facing forward with white parts surrounding colored circles. A nose that stuck out from the face, a mouth that could open wide enough to fit a fist inside, and around its head, thin fibers grew in thick bunches. Hair, Dury's database called it. Humans grew protein fibers from their skin. Everything about this species was strange. Gil finally spoke through the communication link. His voice was shaky with fear. He wanted to know if they should kill the creature now while it was helpless. He argued that anything this strange must be dangerous. Better to end the threat before it began. Commander Bora considered this option. It would be easy. One shot from her plasma rifle and the problem would disappear. They could claim the creature was already dead when they found it. Nobody would know. But Dury objected. She pointed out that they knew nothing about this species. Where did it come from? Were there more of them? What were its capabilities? If they killed this one, they might start a war they could not finish. Besides, Dury added, look at it. Look at how it sleeps. Look at how vulnerable it has made itself. A truly dangerous species would never do this. A truly dangerous species would never trust the universe enough to close its eyes. Commander Bora looked at the sleeping human again. Dury had a point. The creature's breathing was slow and peaceful. Its muscles were relaxed. Its face showed no sign of worry or fear. It slept like a baby, even though it was alone in a damaged ship in unknown space. Either this species was the most foolish in the galaxy, or it was so powerful that nothing in the universe could threaten it. Neither option made Commander Bora comfortable. She made a decision. They would not kill the creature yet. They would study it first. They would learn about it. They would understand what they were dealing with before taking action. The 3 teams spread out through the ship. They searched every room. They downloaded every file from the ship's computers. They collected samples of everything they could find. What they discovered raised more questions than answers. The ship's logs told the story of a creature named Park T. He was a member of a species called human. He came from a planet called Earth, in a sector of space the Alliance had marked as Primitive Radio Source Avoid. They had been avoiding humanity for centuries. They had assumed humans were simple creatures, barely smart enough to send signals into space. They had never bothered to look closer. Now they realized their mistake. The humans had built this ship. It was not as advanced as Velii technology, but it was clever. It used principles that Velii engineers had never considered. The damage from the solar flare should have killed anyone inside, but Park T had kept himself alive through creativity and determination. Gil found food supplies in the ship's storage area. He analyzed them with growing horror. Humans ate other living things. Plants, animals, creatures with eyes and legs and beating hearts. They killed, cooked, and consumed other life forms as their primary source of energy. The Auram were gentle beings. They absorbed nutrients from their environment through their skin. The idea of hunting and eating other creatures made Gil sick. But Commander Bora understood. She was a predator too. The Velii had evolved as hunters. She looked at the human food and felt a strange respect. This Park T was a killer just like her. Duri made the most important discovery. She found personal files in the ship's computer, videos, photos, messages. One video showed Park T sitting with a young female human. They had similar faces, suggesting a family relationship. The female was laughing at something T had said. Their eyes showed warmth and love. Another video showed a group of humans eating together. They were talking and joking, passing food to each other, touching each other's arms and shoulders. It was clearly some kind of bonding ritual. There were photos of a blue planet with white clouds, Earth. It looked peaceful from space, but Duri knew that peaceful appearances could hide violent truths. The last file was a recorded message from another human named Yuna. She had dark hair and kind eyes. In the message, she told T to be careful. She told him to come home safe. She told him that everyone missed him. Her voice was soft and worried. Her eyes were wet with what Duri's database identified as tears. Humans leaked water from their eyes when they felt strong emotions. Duri played this message several times. She was trying to understand something important. This Park T creature had people who loved him, people who waited for him, people who would be sad if he never returned. Could monsters have loved ones? Could killers have friends who cried for them? Duri returned to the observation deck. The human was still sleeping. He had been asleep for almost 2 days now, according to the ship's logs. His body had crashed from exhaustion. It was healing itself through rest. She watched his chest rise and fall. She watched his eyes move behind their lids. Her database told her this was called REM sleep. It meant the creature was dreaming. Dreaming. The human brain created false realities while the body lay helpless. It played stories for itself while the universe continued around it. The Keth did not dream. The Velii did not dream. The Auram did not dream. But humans did. What kind of species trusted the universe enough to dream? Commander Bora approached Duri. She wanted to know if they should wake the creature. They had learned enough from the ship's files. Now they needed to talk to the thing itself. Duri agreed, but suggested caution. Waking a sleeping predator was always risky. Before they could decide how to proceed, the human's eyes snapped open. He saw them immediately. 3 alien beings standing around him. Insect, liquid suit, and living crystal. Shapes and forms that no human had ever seen before. Park T screamed. Commander Bora raised her weapons. Gil turned completely yellow with fear. And Duri watched with fascination as humanity's first contact with alien life began with everyone screaming at each other. The observation deck filled with noise and chaos. Park T scrambled backward across the floor, his bare skin scraping against metal. He grabbed the first thing his hands found, a thermal blanket he had dropped days ago, and pulled it around his body. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. His mind was racing with questions. What were these things? Where had they come from? Was he still dreaming? Commander Bora aimed her plasma rifles at his chest. Her finger rested on the trigger. Every instinct told her to fire. The creature had moved suddenly, violently. It had made a loud noise. These were threatening behaviors. She should eliminate the threat. But the creature was not attacking, it was retreating, it was covering itself, it was making itself smaller, not larger. Gil had pressed himself against the wall so hard that his suit was beginning to crack. His liquid was now a mixture of yellow and green, showing both fear and confusion. The creature's scream had been terrible, so loud, so sharp. His sensitive hearing was still ringing from it. Duri alone remained calm. She watched the human's behavior with scientific interest. The creature was clearly frightened. Its pupils had dilated. Its breathing had become rapid and shallow. Sweat was forming on its skin. But instead of fighting, instead of running, instead of any normal survival response, the creature was doing something strange. Park T looked down at his naked body under the thin blanket. Then he looked at the three aliens. Then he looked down again. His face changed color, becoming darker, more red. Duri's database identified this as blushing. It happened when blood rushed to a human's face during moments of embarrassment or shame. Embarrassment. The creature had woken up surrounded by armed aliens, and its first emotion was embarrassment about being seen without clothes. T pulled the blanket tighter around himself. He tried to stand, but his legs were shaky from days without proper food. He fell back down, sitting on the floor, looking up at the aliens with wide eyes. Then he did something that changed everything. He bent his upper body forward, lowering his head until it nearly touched the floor. He held this position for several seconds. When he rose again, his face was still red with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," he said in Korean. The aliens did not understand his words. They had no translation for his language yet, but they understood the gesture. He had lowered himself. He had exposed the back of his neck, the most vulnerable part of any creature with a spine. He had made himself smaller before them. Commander Bora slowly lowered her weapons. This was not the behavior of a threat. This was not how predators acted. Predators made themselves look bigger. Predators showed their teeth. Predators attacked. This creature was apologizing. For what? For screaming, for being naked, for existing. Duri moved forward slowly. Her crystalline body made gentle chiming sounds with each movement. She wanted the human to see her coming. She did not want to surprise him again. T watched the living crystal approach. Up close, she was beautiful in a strange way. Light passed through her body and scattered into colors. She looked like a sculpture made of diamonds and rainbow glass. Duri stopped 1 meter away from him. She activated her translation device. It had been processing the ship's language files for the past 2 days. It was not perfect yet, but it could manage basic communication. A robotic voice emerged from the device. It spoke in broken Korean. "We not hurt you, we talk." T stared at the translator. Then he stared at Duri. Then he laughed. The laugh surprised everyone, including T himself. Here he was, naked under a blanket, surrounded by aliens from his worst nightmares, and he was laughing. The situation was so strange, so impossible, that his brain had nowhere else to go. Commander Bora tightened her grip on her weapons. Was the creature malfunctioning? Was this some kind of attack? But Duri recognized the laughter for what it was: stress response. Humans laughed when they were nervous, scared, or overwhelmed. It was not aggression, it was release. T's laughter faded into a tired smile. He looked at the translator device and spoke slowly and clearly. "My name is Park T. I am human, I come from Earth, I am not dangerous, I am just very, very confused." The translator processed his words and shared them with the others. Commander Bora's antennae twitched with interest. Gil's liquid turned a slightly calmer shade of blue. Duri's crystals chimed with satisfaction. Communication had begun. Over the next several hours, T answered questions while wrapped in his blanket. He explained his mission. He explained the solar flare. He explained why he had been sleeping naked on the observation deck floor. The aliens listened with growing amazement. When T described human sleep, Commander Bora could not believe it. Humans spent one-third of their lives unconscious. One-third of their existence was spent completely helpless and unaware. How had their species survived? How had they not been eaten by predators while sleeping? T explained that humans used to sleep in groups, protecting each other. They built shelters. They posted guards. They developed ways to sleep safely. But even alone, even in dangerous places, humans still needed sleep. Their brains required it. Their bodies demanded it. Without sleep, humans would go mad and die. Commander Bora looked at the soft, fragile creature before her. A species that chose to be helpless every single night. A species that trusted the universe enough to close its eyes. She did not know whether to admire them or pity them. When T mentioned human food, he grew hungry. He asked if he could eat something. The aliens agreed, curious to see human eating habits in action. T led them to the ship's small kitchen. His legs were steadier now. Having something to do, someone to talk to, was helping him recover. The human body was remarkably adaptable. He found a ration pack and opened it. Inside was rice, vegetables, and small pieces of meat. He heated it in the ship's cooking unit and sat down to eat. Gil watched in horror as the human put dead animal flesh into his mouth. He chewed it with those frightening teeth. He swallowed it down into his stomach full of bacteria. The process was violent and disturbing. T noticed the Oram's discomfort and felt bad. He tried to explain that humans needed to eat other living things to survive. Their bodies could not make all the nutrients they needed. They had to get them from outside sources. This only made Gil more uncomfortable. A species that could only survive by killing others. It was terrifying. But then T did something unexpected. He looked at his meal, then looked at the aliens, then pushed the tray toward them. "Would you like some?" he asked. Gil recoiled in disgust. Commander Bora tilted her head in confusion. Duri's crystals flickered with surprise. T realized they did not understand. "It's okay, you don't have to eat it. I just thought sharing food is how humans show friendship. It's an offer of peace." Duri translated this. The Oram were even more horrified. In their culture, offering food was a threat. It meant you wanted to contaminate them, to force your biology into their bodies. But Duri explained the difference. She told Gil that humans showed trust by sharing resources. It was not an attack, it was a gift. Commander Bora reached out with one of her 4 arms. She took a small piece of vegetable from T's tray. She examined it carefully with her compound eyes. Then she put it in her mouth. It tasted terrible. Velii digestive systems were not designed for plant matter, but she chewed and swallowed anyway. T smiled at her, a genuine, warm smile. His eyes crinkled at the corners. His teeth showed, but not in a threatening way. "Thank you," he said simply. Commander Bora felt something strange in her chest, an unfamiliar sensation. Later, she would realize it was the beginning of respect. The meal ended with a decision. T's ship was too damaged to fly far. The aliens would take him to Station Curl, a neutral outpost where representatives from many species gathered. There, a council would decide what to do about humanity. T agreed to go. He had no other choice. But more than that, he was curious. His whole life, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now he knew the answer. They were not alone. And somehow, against all odds, he was about to become humanity's first ambassador. He found fresh clothes and dressed himself properly. He gathered his personal items, including his tablet with all its photos and videos of Earth. He took one last look at his damaged ship. Then Park T, naked no longer, stepped aboard the Velii vessel and into history. Station Curl was enormous. It hung in space like a metal flower with dozens of docking arms reaching out in all directions. Ships from 100 different species came and went at all hours. Lights blinked. Engines hummed. The station was alive with activity. Park T pressed his face against the window of the Velii ship, staring at the station with wide eyes. He had never seen anything like it. Earth's space stations were tiny compared to this. This structure could hold millions of beings. Commander Bora stood beside him. She had grown somewhat comfortable with the human over the days of travel. He was strange, yes. He was soft and vulnerable and made of meat. But he was also curious and friendly and surprisingly polite. She explained that Station Curl was neutral ground. No species could claim it. No weapons were allowed inside. It was a place for talking, not fighting. T nodded. He understood the concept. Humans had similar places on Earth: embassies, neutral zones, safe spaces for enemies to meet without killing each other. The ship docked, the doors opened, and Park T stepped onto an alien space station. The first thing he noticed was the smell. 100 different species meant 100 different body odors. Some were pleasant, like flowers or fresh rain. Others were unpleasant, like rotting fruit or sulfur. T's nose twitched as it tried to process all the new information. The second thing he noticed was the starring. Everywhere he walked, aliens stopped and looked at him. Some turned colors like Gil did. Some made clicking sounds like Commander Bora's people. Some simply froze in place, unable to believe what they were seeing. T tried not to feel self-conscious. He was the strange one here. He was the outsider. Of course they would stare. Duri stayed close to him, her crystalline body reflecting the station's lights. She had become something like a friend during the journey. She asked questions constantly, wanting to understand everything about humans. T answered as best he could. They walked through corridors filled with wonders. T saw beings made of light. He saw creatures that floated through the air without wings. He saw things that looked like walking plants, their leaves rustling as they moved. Every step brought new amazement. Every turn revealed something impossible. T's mind kept trying to reject what his eyes were showing him. This could not be real. This had to be a dream. But it was real. All of it was real. They arrived at a large circular chamber. In the center was a raised platform. Around the edges sat representatives from dozens of species. This was the Council of Curl, the governing body of the station. T was led to the center platform. He stood there alone, a single human surrounded by alien faces. His heart was beating fast, but he forced himself to stay calm. The questions began. The council wanted to know everything about humanity. Where did they come from? How did they evolve? What were their capabilities? What were their weaknesses? T answered honestly. He told them about Earth. He told them about human history. He told them about their wars and their peace treaties, their failures and their triumphs. He hid nothing. But as he spoke, the council grew disturbed. When T explained that humans could survive losing limbs and continue living, the chamber went silent. Most species died from such injuries. Humans did not. They adapted. They built artificial replacements. They kept going. When T mentioned that humans consumed alcohol for fun, the chamber erupted in confused noise. Alcohol was a poison. It killed cells. It destroyed organs. Why would any species deliberately put poison in their bodies? T shrugged. It makes us feel good, he said. We do lots of things that are not good for us because they make us feel good. The council members exchanged worried looks. A species that poisoned itself for pleasure. What else might they do? But the worst revelation came when T explained human endurance. He told them about persistence hunting. Long ago, before humans had weapons, they killed prey by following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. Humans could not run fast, but they could run far. They could track an animal for days, walking and jogging while their prey slowly tired. Eventually, the animal would fall, unable to continue. Then the humans would kill it. The chamber fell completely silent. Commander Bora's antennae went flat against her head. She had thought she was a predator. She had thought the Velii were fierce hunters, but they hunted with speed and ambush. The idea of following prey for days, never stopping, never giving up, walking it to death, that was something else entirely. That was terrifying. One council member asked if humans still did this. T laughed and said not for hunting, but humans still ran incredible distances for sport. There were races called marathons where humans ran 42 kilometers without stopping. There were ultramarathons where they ran 100 kilometers or more through mountains and deserts. For fun, humans ran themselves to exhaustion for fun. The council called a recess. They needed time to process what they had learned. T was led to a waiting room where he could rest. Dury joined him there. She could see that he was tired and stressed. She wanted to help, but she did not know how. Then she remembered the files from his ship, the personal ones. She asked T about the woman in the video, the one named Yuna who had cried. T's face softened. He explained that Yuna was his colleague and friend. They had trained together for years. She worried about him because she cared about him. Dury asked about the other video, the one with the young female human who looked like T. That was his sister, T explained. Her name was Hana. She was 5 years younger than him. She had cried when he left for this mission. She made him promise to come home safe. Dury processed this information. Humans formed strong emotional bonds with each other. They felt responsible for each other's safety. They cried when separated from loved ones. She had seen predator species before. She had seen them hunt and kill without emotion. But she had never seen predators who also loved, who also cried, who also made promises to their sisters. Dury shared this observation with the council when they reconvened. She showed them the videos from T's ship. She showed them the photos of Earth. She showed them the message from Yuna with her wet eyes and worried voice. She argued that humans were not simple predators. They were something more complex. They were hunters who told stories. They were killers who made art. They were survivors who dreamed. Commander Bora stood to speak. She had been silent until now, but she had been thinking. She told the council about the meal she had shared with the human. She told them about the vegetable she had eaten, how disgusting it had tasted, but how the human smile had made her feel something unexpected. She said that in her long career, she had met many dangerous species. She had learned to recognize true threats, and this human, despite his terrifying biology, did not feel like a threat. He felt like something new, something the galaxy had not seen before. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to isolate humanity, to contain them before they could spread. Others wanted to make contact, to bring them into the galactic community. A few suggested destroying Earth before humans could become a problem. T was not allowed to hear these discussions, but he knew they were happening. His fate, and the fate of his entire species, was being decided in that chamber. He sat alone in the waiting room, looking at photos of his family on his tablet, Hana smiling at her graduation, Yuna giving him a thumbs up before launch, his mother cooking dinner in their small kitchen. He missed them. He missed Earth. He missed the smell of rain and the taste of coffee and the feeling of sunlight on his skin. For the first time since this all began, Park T felt truly afraid, not for himself, but for everyone he loved. What if the council decided humanity was too dangerous? What if they sent ships to Earth? What if everything he knew was destroyed because of this meeting? He was still sitting with these dark thoughts when the alarm started. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed, the station shook with distant impacts. Dury rushed into the waiting room. Her crystals were flickering rapidly, showing stress. She told T that a hostile fleet had arrived. The Neth Dominion, a species that conquered and destroyed without mercy. They had been expanding their territory for centuries. Now they had come to Station Curl. The station had minimal defenses. Evacuation was impossible. 12,000 beings were trapped inside, waiting to die. T stood up slowly. The fear in his chest changed into something else, something harder, something colder. He looked at Dury and asked one question. "How can I help?" The station shook again as another blast hit the outer shields. Through the windows, T could see the Neth fleet. 20 ships, dark and angular, shaped like blades cutting through space. They moved with terrible purpose. Dury explained quickly. The Neth did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They destroyed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. Dozens of civilizations had fallen to them. Station Curl would be just another conquest. T's mind was racing. He was not a soldier. He was an engineer. He fixed things. He solved problems. That was what he did. He asked what the station's defenses were like. Dury told him they had shield generators and a few defensive cannons, but nothing that could stop 20 warships. The shields would fail within the hour. T asked about his ship. The Horizon's Edge still docked at the station, damaged but not dead. Dury said the ship was functional for short distances. The repairs T had made were holding, but what good was one tiny human ship against a fleet? T smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a very difficult decision. He explained his plan. The Neth fleet had a command ship, the largest vessel at the center of their formation. If that ship was destroyed or disabled, the others would lose coordination. They might retreat, they might not, but it was the only chance. His ship could not destroy the command vessel, but it could crash into it. If he hit the right spot, the shield generators or the communication array, he could cripple it. He could give the station a chance. Commander Bora had joined them. She listened to the human's plan with a mixture of horror and respect. He was proposing a suicide mission. He was offering to die for people he had only just met, people who were not even his species. Why, she asked him, why would he do this? T looked at her with those strange forward-facing eyes. He told her that there were 12,000 people on this station. He could not save all of them. He could not save most of them. But maybe, if he was lucky and brave and willing to die, he could give them a chance. And if there was even a small chance that his death could save 12,000 lives, then his choice was easy. Commander Bora felt something crack in her chest. Her whole life, she had believed that different species could not truly understand each other. They could cooperate out of necessity. They could trade and negotiate and sign treaties. But real understanding, real connection, was impossible. This human was proving her wrong. She told T he would not fly alone. She would assign Velii pilots to escort him. They would clear a path through the Neth fighters. They would get him to the command ship. Gil the Orem stepped forward. His liquid had turned a steady blue, the color of courage. He said the Orem would help too. Their ships were small and fast. They could provide distraction and cover. Dury volunteered herself. She had been studying the Horizon's Edge during their journey. She had made modifications, improvements, connecting human systems to Velii technology. The ship was more capable now than it had been, and she wanted to help operate those new systems. T tried to refuse. This was his plan, his risk, his sacrifice. He did not want others to die for his decision. But Commander Bora stopped him. She said that he had taught them something today. He had shown them that strength was not just about weapons and armor. It was about choosing to protect others. It was about courage in the face of death. They would not let him die alone. The battle began within minutes. T sat in the pilot seat of the Horizon's Edge, his hands steady on the controls. Dury was beside him, her crystalline body plugged into the ship's new systems. Around them, Velii fighters and Orem scout ships formed up. The station's docking bay doors opened. The small fleet launched into the chaos of battle. The Neth were not expecting resistance. Their ships were focused on breaking through the station's shields. When the counterattack came, they were slow to respond. Commander Bora's voice came through the communication system. She was leading the Velii fighters herself. She ordered her pilots to engage the Neth escorts while the human pushed through. The space around them filled with light and fire, weapons flashed, ships exploded. The darkness became a storm of destruction. T flew like he had never flown before. His eyes tracked enemy movements. His hands made constant adjustments. His heartbeat slowed as his focus sharpened. This was what humans called the zone, that state of perfect concentration where everything else faded away. The Neth command ship grew larger in his viewport. It was massive, 10 times the size of his little vessel. Its shields glowed with protective energy. Its weapons turned toward him, preparing to fire. Dury found what she was looking for, a weak point in the shield configuration near the ship's communication array. If they hit it at exactly the right angle, at exactly the right speed, they could break through. It was a 1 in 100 chance, maybe 1 in 1,000. T grinned. "I've had worse odds," he said. He pushed the engines to maximum. The ship screamed forward, faster than it was designed to go. Warning alarms blared. Structural integrity warnings flashed. The old damage was getting worse. Dury told him the ship would not survive the impact. He knew. That was the plan. But then she told him something else. There was an escape pod, 1 seat. If he timed the ejection perfectly, he might survive. Might not would might. T thought about Hana. He thought about Yuna. He thought about his mother and his friends and his blue planet with its white clouds. He thought about all the things he might never see again. Then he thought about 12,000 beings on Station Curl. Beings of light and crystal and shell and liquid. Beings he had only just learned existed. Beings who were counting on him. The choice was still easy. He hit the weak point at full speed. The shield shattered. The horizon's edge tore through the communication array like a knife through paper. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed. The command ship shuddered as critical systems failed. T hit the ejection button at the last possible second. The escape pod launched, spinning wildly through the debris field. His vision went dark as the force of acceleration slammed into him. When he woke up, he was floating in space, alone in a tiny pod, surrounded by the wreckage of battle. But the battle was over. The Neth fleet without their command ship had fallen into chaos. Some had retreated. Others had been destroyed by the station's defenders. The threat was gone. Station Curl had survived. T was rescued by a Velii search team. They found him drifting in his pod, unconscious but alive. When they pulled him aboard their ship, Commander Bora was waiting. She looked at the human. He was injured. His face was cut. His arm was broken. But he was breathing. He was alive. She told him that he had done something incredible. He had saved 12,000 lives. He had changed everything. T smiled weakly. Then he looked down at himself and groaned. His clothes had been torn away by the ejection. He was naked again, covered only by a medical blanket the rescue team had thrown over him. "Every time," he muttered. Commander Bora's antennae twitched. Then she made a sound that T had never heard from her before, a clicking, buzzing sound that grew louder and louder. She was laughing. Dury joined in, her crystals chiming with amusement. Even Gil, the nervous Oram, turned a light shade of pink that meant happiness. They were all laughing, all of them together. Aliens and human, predators and prey, creatures who had never met before this week. They were laughing because a naked man had saved them all. The council met again 3 days later. The debate was over. There was only one decision that made sense now. Humanity would be invited to join the Galactic Assembly, not as a threat to be contained, not as a primitive species to be ignored, but as allies, as partners, as friends. A message was sent to Earth, the first official communication between humanity and the wider galaxy. It explained everything that had happened. It invited human representatives to Station Curl. It promised peaceful relations. Attached to the message was an image that Dury had insisted on including. It showed Park T, wrapped in a thermal blanket, giving a thumbs up to the camera. His face was bruised. His hair was messy. He was grinning like a man who had just won the lottery. Behind him, Commander Bora and Gil and a dozen other aliens were gathered, all looking at the human with expressions that ranged from confusion to respect to something like affection. On Earth, in a control room filled with nervous engineers and anxious officials, the message was received. Scientists studied the data. Linguists worked on the translations. Everyone argued about what it all meant. But two women stood apart from the crowd, staring at the attached image. Yuna recognized that grin. She recognized those eyes. She had seen them 1,000 times during training, during meals, during late nights working on equipment together. Beside her, Hana saw her brother. Her annoying, wonderful, impossible brother who had promised to come home safe. He was alive. He was out there somewhere among the stars, wrapped in a blanket, smiling at the camera. He had done what humans always did. He had survived. He had protected others. He had made friends in the strangest possible places. Yuna started crying first, then Hana. They held each other in the control room while the world changed around them. Park T did not know they were watching. He did not know that his image was being broadcast across Earth. He did not know that he had become famous, the first human to make contact with alien life. He was too busy sleeping. In a medical bay on Station Curl, the human ambassador lay in a bed designed for species 3 times his size. He was wearing a hospital gown that kept slipping open. His snoring echoed through the quiet room. Duri sat beside him, watching him sleep. She still could not understand how any species survived such vulnerability, closing their eyes, shutting down their minds, trusting the universe not to hurt them. But maybe that was the point. Maybe humans were strong because they were soft. Maybe their power came from their willingness to be weak. They dreamed while the universe spun on. They trusted while darkness surrounded them. They hoped even when hope seemed foolish. And sometimes, when the moment demanded it, they woke up and saved everyone around them. Then they went back to sleep. Duri watched the human breathe, in and out, slow and peaceful, vulnerable and powerful at the same time. She had a lot more to learn about this species. But she had time, all the time in the galaxy. The humans slept, the stars turned, and somewhere on a blue planet called Earth, 2 women looked at a photograph and smiled through their tears. The universe would never be the same.